A city older than the pyramids sleeps beneath the sea. This is the reality modern science is uncovering, not with diving gear, but with sound and light. We are going to explore 15 submerged coastal settlements, lost worlds revealed by advanced bathymetric mapping. You will see how this technology acts like a time machine, draining oceans to expose ancient streets, temples, and entire landscapes forgotten by history. What caused a bustling Bronze Age metropolis to vanish? And what secret does a 9,000-year-old village hold about human survival? These silent ruins are not just curiosities. They are urgent lessons written in stone and sand, showing how civilizations have always danced with a changing coast. By the end, you will understand how the fate of these drowned cities could hold a mirror to our own future. What do you think it takes for a society to be remembered after it disappears? The ocean's greatest secret is not what it hides, but how we finally learn to see it. To understand the ghostly cities we are about to visit, you need to grasp the quiet revolution in vision that made them visible. This is the science of bathymetric mapping. In simple terms, it is the art of drawing a three-dimensional map of the seafloor. For centuries, charting the depths meant lowering a weighted line over the side of a ship, a painfully slow process that revealed only a single point of data at a time. The picture it created was like trying to understand a vast forest by studying one lone tree. Then came sound. Modern multibeam sonar systems mounted on research vessels send out a fan of acoustic pulses, hundreds at a time, that sweep the seabed like a flashlight beam. Each pulse travels down, hits the bottom, and bounces back. By measuring the precise time it takes for that echo to return, a computer can calculate the depth, building a point-by-point portrait of the submerged world below. This technology can reveal details as fine as a large boulder or the outline of a sunken wall, all from the surface. But sound has a limitation. It cannot penetrate murky coastal waters or reach the very shallow areas where ancient people often lived. For that, science turns to light. This is where a technology called LiDAR, or light detection and ranging, changes everything. Instead of sound pulses from a ship, LiDAR uses rapid laser pulses fired from an aircraft. When these laser beams hit the water surface, most of the light reflects back, but a small, powerful fraction penetrates, reaching the shallow seabed and returning to a sensor. By filtering out the surface reflection and analyzing the light that came from below, sophisticated software can literally strip away the water, revealing the ancient ground beneath with astonishing clarity. It is, in every sense, a way to digitally drain the sea. The result is a dataset so precise it can show the subtle curve of a buried river channel, the straight line of a forgotten road, or the geometric footprint of a foundation. Dr. Helen Farr, a leading marine geoarchaeologist, describes this shift as moving from speculative treasure hunting to a discipline of surgical precision. Researchers can now survey vast areas, identify promising targets with scientific confidence, and only then send divers to investigate. This is not just better technology. It is a new way of thinking, turning the entire continental shelf into an open history book. With this powerful lens now focused, what was the first lost world to come back into view? Beneath the crystal waters of the Aegean, a city sleeps in a silence broken only by the whisper of currents. This is Pavlopetri, off the coast of Greece, a place that rewrote history the moment it was seen clearly. When a team led by the University of Nottingham used multibeam sonar to scan it in 2009, they did not just find scattered ruins, they uncovered an entire urban blueprint, perfectly preserved in the sand. Here were the ghostly grids of streets, the clear outlines of homes and courtyards, even ceremonial sites, all laid out as if the inhabitants had just stepped away. Dating back more than 5,000 years, this makes Pavlopetri the oldest known submerged city in the world, a thriving hub centuries before the pyramids of Giza rose from the desert. The maps tell a story of a sophisticated, connected community. Archaeologists found clusters of heavy ceramic discs with holes in their centers, identified as loom weights from textile workshops. Combined with pottery styles that echo designs from distant islands, a picture emerges of a bustling port where local wool was woven into trade goods and shipped across the Mediterranean. This was not an isolated village. It was a networked node in a vast Bronze Age economy, yet its fate was sealed by the very ground it was built upon. So why did this city sink while others on higher ground endured? The answer is written in the stones themselves. Surveys show walls that are not just fallen, but deliberately tilted. Entire sections of the city appear to have subsided unevenly. This points to the slow, relentless work of local geological faults, a gradual sinking of the landmass combined with the creeping rise of sea levels after the last ice age. Pavlopetri did not vanish in a cataclysm. It was slowly, patiently reclaimed by the sea, room by room, street by street, over generations. This gentle drowning is what makes the site so priceless. It offers a pristine, undisturbed snapshot of early Helladic daily life, frozen at the moment it was abandoned. There was no later city built on top of it, no subsequent plowing of fields to scatter its remains. It is a time capsule, a hauntingly beautiful prototype of urban planning from a shadowy era. In its quiet courtyards and orderly lanes, we see the blueprint for how coastal societies organized themselves, and in its submerged fate, we witness the first act of a story that would echo for millennia. Pavlopetri stands as a solemn reminder that the dialogue between human settlement and the rising sea is one of our oldest and most persistent narratives. 9,000 years ago, a community gathered around a circle of stones. Today, that circle rests silently on the seafloor, a profound mystery written in rock and bone. This is Atlit Yam off the coast of Israel, a village so ancient it predates Stonehenge by millennia and pottery by centuries. Discovered not by chance, but through the deliberate, sweeping gaze of marine seismic surveys, this pre-pottery Neolithic site is a time capsule from humanity's first tentative steps into farming. The bathymetric maps revealed something startling. The village was not built on a random stretch of coast. It was carefully situated around a freshwater spring, a vital resource for crops and survival. Now, that spring and the homes that encircled it lie 8 to 12 meters beneath the Mediterranean, preserved in a cold, dark embrace. What the maps outlined, archaeology brought to life. Divers found a landscape of domesticity frozen in time. There were stone foundations for houses, hearths where families cooked, and flint tools dropped where they were last used. But Atlit Yam also holds quieter, more enigmatic spaces. A semicircle of massive stones, with one central monolith weighing several tons, stands as a possible ritual site, a place where this early community may have sought meaning from the world around them. Even more direct are the human burials found within the settlement, offering an unparalleled biological record. Studies of these remains provided the oldest known evidence of tuberculosis, showing the health challenges that emerged when humans began living in close quarters with animals. This is not just a collection of artifacts, it is a snapshot of a complete society at a pivotal turning point in our history. Then it was gone. The question of why hangs over the site like the water above it. The evidence points to a sudden, violent end. Sediment cores taken from the seabed show a layer of marine sand and shell fragments violently churned into the village's freshwater spring layer. This is a classic signature of a high-energy marine event, most likely a catastrophic tsunami. Imagine a community built on the promise of a reliable spring, watching a wall of water erase that promise in moments. Alternatively, some researchers point to a rapid pulse of sea level rise, a relentless inundation from the melting ice age glaciers that would have made the land uninhabitable. Whether the end came in a single day or over a few desperate years, the result was the same. A thriving village, one of the earliest experiments in settled agricultural life, was surrendered to the sea. Atlit Yam's legacy is a humbling duality. It shows incredible human innovation, the deliberate building of a society around shared resources and possibly shared beliefs. Yet it also reveals a profound vulnerability. These pioneers who had learned to cultivate plants and shape their environment were ultimately powerless against the larger forces of a changing planet. Their story is not one of failure but of context. It forces us to reconsider the narrative of early farming communities as inherently stable. Instead, we see resilience punctuated by fragility, a poignant reminder that our oldest dialogue with the coast has always been a negotiation with forces far beyond our control. This sunken village does not just show us where we came from, it asks us to reflect on the foundations we build upon today and what unseen waves might test them tomorrow. The legend of a gateway to Egypt persisted for centuries, a city mentioned by Herodotus and visited by Helen of Troy, yet dismissed by many as pure myth. Then, in the year 2000, a team led by French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudiot pointed their side-scan sonar toward the murky waters of Aboukir Bay, near the Nile Delta. The seafloor, they discovered, was not empty. It was a graveyard of giants. Bathymetric profiling revealed the colossal outlines of toppled statues, the sprawling foundations of temples, and a harbor so vast it could have serviced an empire. This was not a myth. This was Heracleion, the lost port found. The maps painted a picture of staggering wealth and sacred power. They detailed a main temple complex dedicated to Amun-Jereb, a fusion of Egyptian and Greek gods surrounded by ceremonial canals. Dozens of ancient shipwrecks and over 70 anchors lay scattered across the harbor floor, silent witnesses to the ceaseless maritime traffic that once connected Egypt to the Greek world. Among the most poignant finds were the massive inscribed slabs known as the Decree of Size and the Stele of Heracleion. These stone documents, written in both Greek and Egyptian hieroglyphs, served as official proclamations, confirming the city's critical role as the primary customs and tax collection point for all goods entering Egypt. This was the bustling, bureaucratic heart of ancient trade, where cultures and commodities merged before flowing up the Nile. So what force could erase such a vital, monumental city from the map and memory? The answer lies in the very ground it was built upon. Heracleion was constructed on the unstable, waterlogged clay of the Nile Delta. Over centuries, a perfect storm of pressures conspired against it. The gradual rise in sea levels added constant hydraulic pressure. Major earthquakes common in the region likely triggered a phenomenon called soil liquefaction, where solid ground temporarily behaves like a liquid, causing massive structures to tilt and sink. Finally, the immense weight of the city's own granite monuments and temples may have simply pressed the fragile substrate down until the Mediterranean rushed in. Heracleion did not fall to an invader. It was consumed by the earth and sea it depended on, a slow-motion catastrophe that played out over generations. Its rediscovery is a powerful testament to how modern technology can resurrect not just stones, but stories. The city's fate is a humbling lesson in geological vulnerability, showing that even the grandest symbols of human power are subject to the silent, shifting foundations beneath them. Heracleion's grandeur now belongs to the deep, but its echoes, once mere legend, have been given a definitive shape and a solemn voice by the maps that found it. The story of our coast is not always written in stone and temple blocks. Sometimes it is pressed into the soft, forgiving mud, waiting 8,000 years to be read. In the shifting currents of the Solent Strait between mainland England and the Isle of Wight, bathymetric surveys revealed a different kind of lost world. This is Bouldnor Cliff, a place where advanced 3D seismic mapping did not find grand monuments, but something arguably more intimate, an entire drowned landscape from the Mesolithic era. The scans exposed ancient peat beds, the preserved soils of a vanished environment, lying 10 meters below the modern sea. This was not a city. It was a fertile, forested river valley where small, mobile communities of hunter-gatherers lived, a world that slowly vanished beneath the rising waters of the English Channel. What makes Bouldnor Cliff so extraordinary is not its scale, but its preservation. The silts and clays that buried this landscape created an oxygen-free environment, a perfect seal that halted decay. Within this cold, dark time capsule, archaeologists have recovered materials that almost never survive on dry land. They found delicate plant fibers, evidence of woven technology. They uncovered carefully worked wood, including a section of a crafted plank that shows a level of joinery and carpentry far more advanced than anyone attributed to these early peoples. This single piece of wood quietly dismantles old assumptions. It suggests these communities were not merely surviving, they were innovating, building sophisticated structures and tools from their forest home with a skill we never knew they possessed. Most haunting of all are the footprints. Preserved in the ancient silt are the clear impressions of human feet, pressed into the soft ground millennia ago. They are not arranged in a path, but clustered as if people were standing together, perhaps working at the water's edge, processing reeds or fish. These are not the ghosts of kings or warriors. They are the momentary traces of daily life, a direct physical connection to individuals whose names and stories are lost, but whose presence is now undeniably felt. This site forces us to reimagine the past. It paints a picture of a complex, rich interaction with a bountiful environment, a society with its own technology and traditions, deeply connected to a valley that would not last. The end for Bouldnor Cliff was not a sudden cataclysm, but a relentless, creeping transformation. As the great ice sheets melted at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose inexorably. The freshwater river valley first became a brackish estuary, its ecosystems changing. Then the sea claimed it completely, drowning the forests, flooding the hunting grounds, and forcing the people to retreat again and again to higher ground. This was a slow-motion loss of a world, a gradual diminishing of a territory that had sustained generations. The mud that so perfectly preserved the footprints and tools is the very same sediment that buried this way of life, layer by patient layer. Bouldnor Cliff does not show us a fallen civilization. It reveals a lost chapter in an ongoing human story of adaptation, reminding us that some of our most profound history is not about what was built to last, but what was left gently behind in the quiet, rising tide. 40 meters down, in the dark silts of India's Gulf of Khambhat, a mystery lies that challenges the very timeline of civilization. Here, controversial sonar surveys have painted a startling picture on the bathymetric map, revealing not random debris, but vast geometric shapes spread across a drowned ancient river valley. The scale is immense, with some interpretations suggesting structures stretching for kilometers along what was once a fertile riverbank, now submerged under nearly 130 feet of water. The potential age of the site is what truly sends a ripple through historical understanding. Core samples from the seabed containing what some researchers identify as worked wood and stone artifacts have been dated to an astonishing 9,000 years before the present. If validated, this would place a complex society here millennia before the great cities of the Indus Valley or Harappan civilization ever rose. This is not just a sunken village, it is a potential precursor, a lost chapter that could rewrite the origins of urban culture on the Indian subcontinent. The clues pulled from the murky depths are both tangible and tantalizing. Beyond the sonar outlines of large, grid-like formations, dredging operations have reportedly recovered objects that speak of daily life and artistry, pottery fragments, intricately carved stone beads, and even pieces of what could be construction material. To proponents, these are not scattered remnants from a later shipwreck. They are the coherent signature of a settled, sophisticated people who lived, worked, and traded along this vanished river. They imagine a pre-Harappan society, a cultural seedbed whose innovations and social organization would eventually flow into the Indus Valley cities we know from later history. The bathymetric data supports a plausible environment for such a society, showing the clear, branching channels of a major river system that would have provided fresh water, rich soil, and a highway for transport and communication, a perfect cradle for early civilization. Yet, this site remains one of the most debated underwater discoveries in the world. The central controversy lies in the nature of the evidence itself. Skeptical archaeologists point out that the strong tidal currents in the Gulf can move and abrade stones, potentially creating formations that look artificial but are entirely natural. They argue that objects like stone tools and beads could have been displaced from later known settlements upstream and deposited here by those same powerful waters. The debate is a crucial, healthy part of the scientific process, a reminder that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the ocean floor is a complex archive where nature and human history are often intricately intertwined. This is where the story of the Gulf of Khambhat becomes about more than pottery or potential foundations. It exemplifies the powerful, provocative role of bathymetric mapping in modern exploration. The technology does not give us easy answers. Instead, it hands us profound, challenging questions. It identifies anomalies on a scale and in a location that demand explanation, pushing researchers to look deeper, to refine their methods, and to continually question the established narrative. Whether this site ultimately proves to be a lost metropolis or a remarkable geological puzzle, its investigation has already expanded the boundaries of the possible. It forces us to wonder how many other cultural dawns might have flickered to life on now submerged coasts, their stories waiting not in myth, but in the subtle contours of data waiting to be interpreted. This tension between discovery and doubt is not a weakness of the science, but its very engine driving us to look again with clearer eyes at the forgotten frontiers beneath the waves. The seafloor holds shapes that defy easy explanation, and nowhere is this more true than off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island. Here, in the clear, deep blue waters 25 meters down, lies a formation that has divided experts for decades. It is a colossal arrangement of rock, a series of immense terraces, sharp angles, and what look unmistakably like giant steps leading to a wide, flat platform. Bathymetric surveys first outlined its staggering scale, while divers have mapped features that seem pulled from an ancient city, a monolithic structure nicknamed the Monument. There are straight, 90-degree angles meeting in perfect corners. There are twin pillars of stone standing side by side. There is even a prominent rock formation that many observers instantly recognize as the carved shape of a turtle, a creature of great significance in many Asian cultures. The sheer geometry of the place feels intentional, architectural, as if a giant's hand had carved a ziggurat from the living seabed. If these forms are indeed the work of human hands, the implications are staggering. Geological dating of the rock itself suggests the structure was last above water around 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age when sea levels were far lower. This would place its construction in a prehistoric era long before the rise of any known civilization capable of such monumental stonework. Proponents of the human origin theory, like marine geologist Masaki Kimura, point to specific details that seem beyond nature's random artistry. They note the clusters of what appear to be tool marks on the rock faces, the symmetrical channels that could have been drainage systems, and the way the main terrace aligns with the cardinal directions. In this view, Yonaguni could be the remnant of a lost culture, a sophisticated society that thrived on a now submerged landmass, its entire history erased by the rising Pacific. Yet the ocean is a master sculptor, and geology offers a powerful counter-narrative. Skeptical scientists, including renowned geologist Robert Schoch, argue that the sandstone in this region is naturally fractured along horizontal and vertical planes. The relentless forces of tectonic activity, tidal erosion, and chemical weathering could have produced all the seemingly artificial features through entirely natural processes. The perfect right angles, simply the result of the rock splitting along its natural joints. The giant steps, ledges created by differential erosion of the sandstone layers over millennia. The iconic turtle shape, a fortunate assemblage of fractured rocks that happens to resemble a familiar form, a phenomenon known as pareidolia, where our minds find patterns in randomness. From this perspective, Yonaguni is a breathtaking natural wonder, a testament to the planet's own artistic power. This is where bathymetric mapping does more than just reveal a site. It frames a profound philosophical debate. The technology gives us the undeniable shape of the mystery, the precise contours of the question, but it cannot tell us the answer. Yonaguni sits precisely at the tense and fascinating intersection of geology and archaeology. It challenges us to interpret ambiguous forms in an environment that is inherently alien, forcing a confrontation between what we see and what we know to be possible. The real value of this sunken puzzle may not be in proving the existence of a forgotten civilization, but in illustrating the limits of our perception. It shows how our desire to find human fingerprints in the deep past can color our interpretation of the natural world. Whether an ancient temple complex or a masterpiece of natural geology, Yonaguni Monument captivates because it remains stubbornly open to interpretation. It is a reminder that some of the most profound discoveries are not those that provide answers, but those that reawaken our most fundamental questions about time, nature, and the forgotten chapters of our own story. The map of Europe, is a recent invention missing a continent of its own. Where the cold, grey waters of the North Sea now churn, there once stretched a vast, low-lying plain of forests, marshes, and rolling hills known as Doggerland. For thousands of years, this was not a barrier but a bridge connecting the British peninsula to the mainland, a thriving heartland for Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. Then, around 6,500 years before the Common Era, the final chapters of the last ice age wrote its fate. The great ice sheets melted, global sea levels rose, and the Atlantic Ocean staged a slow, relentless invasion. The land drowned inch by patient inch until the waves closed over the final hilltops and a continent vanished from human memory. For centuries, its existence was just a theory, a ghost hinted at by the odd mammoth bone pulled up in a fishing net. Then came the maps, modern multibeam sonar surveys conducted for oil exploration and geological research, performed a digital resurrection. They systematically scanned the seabed, and the data revealed a lost world in stunning detail. The images showed not crumbling walls, but the very bones of the landscape itself. Ancient, winding river channels snaked across the seafloor, tracing the paths of forgotten waterways like the Rhine and Thames when they were mere tributaries in a larger system. The scans outlined the ghostly basins of vast freshwater lakes, once vital oases for wildlife and humans. They even identified raised areas, likely hills or sandbanks, that would have been dry ground, the most probable stages for human activity. This is a different kind of settlement story. Doggerland was not a city or a village with fixed addresses. It was a nomadic homeland, a territory intimately known and constantly traversed. The bathymetric maps do not show streets, but they illuminate the highways, the river valleys that guided movement, and the resource-rich lagoons that would have drawn families season after season. The evidence of their passage is scattered but telling. Fishermen trawling the infamous Dogger Bank have, for generations, hauled up more than cod. Their nets bring ashore the tangible echoes of that drowned world, antler tools carved for hunting, flint blades dropped by a riverbank, and the bones of aurochs, giant wild cattle that once roamed those lush plains. Each find is a pin on the map, confirming that the landscape revealed by sonar was indeed lived in, hunted, and cherished. The story of Doggerland's end is not one of sudden catastrophe, but of a long, forced retreat. As the sea crept inward, the available land shrank. The rich coastal estuaries and freshwater marshes, the most productive environments, were the first to flood. Communities would have had to consolidate, moving to higher ground, watching as their known world slowly fragmented into islands and then vanished entirely. The final submersion may have been hastened by a catastrophic event like the Storegga slide, a massive underwater landslide off Norway that likely triggered a devastating tsunami, delivering a final, brutal blow to any remaining settlements. The discovery of this lost continent through broad-scale bathymetry fundamentally reshapes our understanding of prehistoric Europe. It turns the North Sea from an empty moat into a central character in the human story, a fertile cradle that nurtured early populations for millennia. The haunting, empty landscape maps are, in truth, crowded with invisible footprints. They show us that some of the most profound human histories are not written in stone monuments, but in the subtle contours of the earth itself, in the pathways between rivers and the gathering places around lakes. Doggerland reminds us that civilization is not always about building things that last, but about knowing a landscape so deeply that its loss, even after 8,000 years, still feels like a missing piece of our collective home. Legends often whisper truths that history books have forgotten. For centuries, the fishermen along the coast of Tamil Nadu told a story of 7 magnificent pagodas that once stood at Mahabalipuram, their spires gleaming in the sun. The tale said that 6 of these grand temples were taken by the sea as punishment for human pride, leaving only the shore temple to bear witness on the beach. It was a beautiful myth, a poetic explanation for the powerful, erosive waves that have always shaped this coastline. Then, in 2004, everything changed. When the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami temporarily pulled the ocean back from the shore, locals reported glimpsing strange, man-made shapes on the newly exposed seabed. Scientists listened. What followed was a concerted effort using side-scan sonar and systematic diving surveys, a technological inquiry into an ancient story. The bathymetric maps and underwater cameras did not find myth. They found masonry, scattered across the sandy floor, extending seaward from the famous shore temple, lay the silent proof. There were fallen walls constructed from the same distinctive granite blocks used in the known monuments ashore. There were orderly piles of stone that did not match natural reef formations. Divers documented what appeared to be the foundations of structures, platforms, and even a large, collapsed stone lion, a signature emblem of the Pallava dynasty that ruled this region in the 7th and 8th centuries. This was not a prehistoric village. These were the ruins of a sophisticated, ornate temple complex, contemporary with the magnificent rock-cut sculptures that make Mahabalipuram a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. The science confirmed a stunning reality. The local folklore was not mere fantasy. It was a preserved memory, an oral history that had accurately recorded a geological event across more than 1,000 years. The Pallava builders were master architects, but they built on a dynamic, vulnerable coast. The structures now underwater were likely claimed by the same forces visible today, the relentless battering of monsoon waves and a gradual rise in sea level over the centuries. This was not a single catastrophic submergence, but a slow, persistent encroachment where storm by storm, century by century, the ocean advanced and the human frontier retreated. The significance of Mahabalipuram's submerged ruins is profound. It bridges the gap between deep time and recorded history, showing that the dialogue with the sea does not belong only to the distant past. Here, a well-documented civilization from what we consider the historical period faced the same enduring challenges as the people of Doggerland or Atlit Yam. Their stone poetry, meant to last for eternity, now resides in the domain of fish and coral. This discovery does more than validate a legend, it reframes it. It shows how communities process profound environmental change through story, transforming a slow-motion loss into a narrative that can be passed down through countless generations. The 6 pagodas were indeed claimed, not by divine wrath, but by the patient, indifferent power of the ocean. In their silent stones, we see that coastal change is not a chapter that closed with the Ice Age. It is an ongoing story, and we are still writing our own lines upon a shore that is forever moving. Herod the Great dreamed in stone and water, and his grandest ambition was a harbor built against the open sea. Caesarea Maritima was not just a port, it was a statement, a declaration that a client king of Rome could master the Mediterranean itself. Constructed in the 1st century before the Common Era, its colossal breakwaters reached out like arms to embrace the sea, creating a safe anchorage where none existed naturally. For centuries, it thrived as a bustling hub of empire, a gateway where spices, silks, and ideas flowed in from across the known world. Yet today, walk along the modern shoreline, and you will see the ghost of that ambition. Dark, jagged lines of stone break the surface just offshore, the skeletal remains of a wonder now sleeping in the shallows. This is not the story of a sudden cataclysm. It is a lesson in slow-motion geology, meticulously charted by modern bathymetric surveys. Detailed sonar mapping has done more than just outline these ruins. It has reverse-engineered Herod's genius. The scans reveal the harbor's immense scale, mapping the precise layout of the protective moles, the submerged quays where ships tied up, and the foundations of warehouses that once held unimaginable wealth. The most fascinating discovery lies in the construction itself. The Romans and Herod's engineers used a special kind of hydraulic concrete that could cure underwater. The bathymetric data, combined with archaeological sampling, shows how this concrete was poured into vast wooden forms right on the seafloor, creating monolithic blocks that fused with the bedrock. This was innovation on a staggering scale, an ancient answer to a problem we still grapple with today: how to build something permanent against the relentless energy of the sea. For hundreds of years it worked. The harbor withstood storms and served generations, but the maps also tell the story of its yielding. They show how sections of the breakwater have slumped and fractured, not from poor design, but from the ground shifting beneath them. This region is seismically active, and a series of earthquakes over the centuries likely caused sections of the seafloor to subside. This, combined with the gradual, global rise in sea level since the Roman period, meant the water simply gained ground inch by century. The harbor did not vanish in a day. It was incrementally reclaimed, its functional edges becoming archaeological features, its bustling docks transforming into a quiet reef for marine life. Studying Caesarea's submerged skeleton provides a masterclass in Roman engineering and the vast trade networks it supported. Every mapped warehouse foundation speaks to the volume of commerce, every key stone to the organization of a maritime superpower. Its transformation from a working port to an underwater museum represents a different kind of loss than the drowned villages of the Stone Age. This was a deliberate, monumental achievement that eventually met a force even Rome could not command: the patient, shifting tectonics of the planet itself. In its silent stones, we see the entire life cycle of human ambition on the coast, from glorious creation to graceful surrender, a cycle now being read in perfect detail by the same sea that now holds it. The ocean is not the only water that guards a lost world. Deep within China's Zhejiang province lies a valley drowned not by the sea, but by choice. This is the lost city of Xicheng, or Lion City, a metropolis of staggering beauty that vanished beneath the waves in the year 1959. It was not a geological shift or a rising tide that claimed it, but a modern decision to build the Qingdao Lake hydroelectric dam. The reservoir filled, and the city, with its 1,400 years of history, was silently sealed beneath a new lake, presumed lost to all but memory. Yet, in a profound twist, the water that submerged it became its perfect protector. Shielded from wind, sun, and the wear of modern development, Xicheng entered a state of suspended animation. Its intricate stonework, ornate arches, and towering city walls waited in the cool, dark stillness. Decades later, advanced mapping technology turned its gaze inward to this freshwater tomb. Using high-resolution multibeam sonar and underwater LiDAR, teams have performed a digital resurrection. They have created stunningly detailed three-dimensional models of the entire city, revealing a labyrinth of streets, over 265 archways, and temples adorned with carvings of lions, dragons, and phoenixes from the Ming and Qing dynasties. The maps show a city frozen at the moment of its inundation, a perfect snapshot of late imperial Chinese urban life. This makes Xicheng a unique and vital chapter in our story. While it is not a victim of ancient climate change, its exceptional preservation offers an invaluable reference point. For archaeologists studying sites like Pavlopetri or Heracleion, where time and the sea have worn away the details, Lion City serves as a pristine control sample. It shows with breathtaking clarity how inundation can act as a preservative, locking architecture and even delicate relief carvings in a state of near-perfect stasis. The technology refined here in the clear, calm waters of a man-made lake is the same technology that peers into the turbulent, salty depths of the Mediterranean or the North Sea. It is a practice ground for precision, proving that we can now document a sunken site down to the finest decorative detail without ever disturbing a single stone. This bridges our ancient mysteries with a more recent, poignant history. Xicheng's fate was a trade-off, the sacrifice of a cultural treasure for modern energy and water security. Its mapping adds a layer of solemn reflection to our exploration. These tools do not only uncover cities lost to natural forces, they also bear witness to heritage intentionally surrendered to progress. The stunning digital models of Lion City are more than archaeological records. They are a form of respectful remembrance, ensuring that what was physically sacrificed to the water is not lost to knowledge. In its silent, decorated halls, we see a different facet of the dialogue between human civilization and water, one governed not by planetary cycles, but by human choice, and now by our growing desire to recover and honor what those choices have left behind. A different kind of monument rests on the seafloor near Western Australia. Off Cape Peron, the detailed eye of bathymetric surveys has not found temples or walls, but something profoundly human, ancient mounds of discarded shells. These are submerged shell middens, the accumulated remains of countless meals shared by Aboriginal families over 7,000 years ago. Each mound is a layered archive of daily life, marking a campsite or a seasonal gathering place where people harvested the bounty of a coastline that no longer exists. Their presence underwater is not a mystery of collapse, but a direct, physical record of a rising sea slowly claiming the very ground where generations once lived, worked, and ate. This discovery shifts our entire perspective. While we have marveled at drowned cities and ceremonial sites, these middens bring us to the intimate, essential level of sustenance and community. They are the archaeology of the kitchen fire, not the palace. The technology that can map a vast sunken city like Heracleion is the same that can pinpoint these subtle, precious piles, proving its power to reveal the full spectrum of human history, from the monumental to the mundane. For Australia's First Nations peoples, these findings carry a profound resonance. They provide tangible, scientific validation for oral histories that have spoken for millennia of ancestral lands now beneath the waves. Stories passed down through countless generations describe familiar landscapes, freshwater sources, and hunting grounds that were lost to the encroaching sea after the last ice age. The submerged Middens are a material bridge connecting that deep memory to the present, offering physical proof of an enduring cultural connection to a continent whose shape has dramatically changed. This is not just about mapping a past shoreline. It is about honoring a continuity of knowledge that has navigated that transformation for thousands of years. The slow drowning of these sites tells a quiet story of adaptation. As the sea level rose, the productive coastal ecosystems, the very supermarkets of the ancient world, would have shifted. The Middens show us where people once gathered their food, and their submergence marks the moment when that particular resource patch was abandoned to the tides. Communities would have had to follow the receding coastline or adapt their diets and technologies to new environments. This is cultural resilience written in oyster shells and cockles, a demonstration of how traditional lifestyles evolved in rhythm with a changing planet. The Cape Peron Middens, therefore, are more than archaeological sites. They are waypoints in an epic narrative of survival and connection. They remind us that the most significant history is often written not in stone, but in the simple, enduring patterns of life lived in close relationship with the land and the sea. In their humble composition, they hold a powerful lesson about observing change, remembering what was lost, and finding a way to carry forward. The Mycenaeans built their citadels on hills, but their world extended far into the sea. Recent multibeam sonar surveys in the Argolic Gulf, the watery heartland of their civilization, have revealed a stunning truth. The coastline we see today is a sunken version of a much busier, more connected Bronze Age world. The detailed maps show not one lost city, but a scattered archipelago of settlements, with the clear outlines of potential fortification walls, the geometric footprints of building foundations, and even traces of what could be ancient road networks, all lying silently on the seabed. These sites are contemporaneous with the great palaces of Mycenae and Tiryns, which still stand inland. Their submergence paints a picture of a densely populated and strategically organized coast that has since been pulled downward by the immense, slow force of tectonic subsidence. This is a different scale of discovery altogether. Instead of a single dramatic ruin like Pavlopetri, this is a reconstructed landscape, a network of interlinked communities that function together. The maps allow archaeologists to do more than study a site. They can now hypothesize about the entire pattern of life. They can trace how these coastal settlements were positioned to control maritime routes, how they might have relayed goods and information between the powerful mainland centers and the offshore islands, and how they collectively exploited the rich resources of the Gulf. Imagine a series of small, fortified ports, each within sight of the next, forming a protective and commercial chain along the shore. A fishing village here, a pottery workshop there, a garrisoned outpost on a strategic headland, all connected by well-trodden paths and frequent boat traffic. This bathymetric data lets us see the economic and social circuitry of an entire civilization, not just its monumental hubs. The water that now covers these sites did not erase them. It simply disconnected them from our historical map. Their discovery through sonar rethreads that connection. It shows us that the famed Mycenaean civilization was not just a collection of inland fortresses, but a truly maritime culture, its prosperity and security deeply tied to its command of the coastal fringe. The gradual sinking of this landscape, likely due to the same seismic faults that make Greece so geologically active, was not a sudden catastrophe. It was a generational shift, a slow recalibration of the relationship between land and sea that eventually rendered these strategic locations untenable. In mapping this drowned network, we gain a broader, more nuanced view of how ancient societies truly utilized their environment. It highlights the ultimate power of this technology to reconstruct not just points on a map, but the living, breathing cultural and economic networks that once thrived there. Entire chapters of human endeavor lost to the patient, relentless movement of the Earth itself. The Atlantic holds a mystery that tests the very line between nature and memory. West of the Azores Islands, deep under thousands of feet of water, bathymetric sonar has painted a startling picture on the seafloor. The readings show large, strikingly symmetrical shapes, some with sharp angles and stepped sides that, to the human eye, look uncannily like pyramids or the foundations of vast platforms. The scale is monumental and the location is profound, sitting atop the mid-Atlantic ridge, a submerged mountain range where tectonic plates slowly pull apart. The immediate question is as old as human curiosity. Are we looking at the ruins of a forgotten civilization, a sunken world like Atlantis, or is the ocean playing a trick on our perception? The scientific consensus leans heavily toward a geological explanation. This region is a volcanic hotspot, and the formations align with known processes. Submarine volcanoes can erupt and collapse in ways that create flat-topped seamounts with sheer sides. Massive landslides of blocky basalt can pile into stair-like formations. The powerful, natural forces of plate tectonics and erosion are master architects, fully capable of crafting shapes that appear designed. For researchers, the burden of proof for a human origin is immense, requiring not just suggestive shapes, but clear artifacts, tool marks, or construction materials that could not have formed naturally at such depth. So far, that evidence remains elusive. This debate is far more than an academic puzzle. It serves as a vital, humbling lesson in the scientific process itself. Bathymetric mapping provides an incredible stream of raw data, a collection of echoes and points of light. But data is not truth, it is a question. The interpretation of that data is where the real work and the real danger of error begins. Our minds are pattern recognition engines, hardwired to find familiar forms in chaos, to see faces in clouds and structures in mountains. This instinct fueled the discovery of many legitimate sites, but it can also lead us to project our hopes onto the blank canvas of the deep. The Azores formations represent a crucial case study in restraint. They remind us that the most responsible use of this technology involves a disciplined balance between open-minded wonder and rigorous skepticism. It requires the patience to say, "This is fascinating, but let us rule out every natural possibility before we whisper the word civilization." This careful, sometimes frustrating process is what separates myth from history. It ensures that when we do finally point to a sunken city with certainty, as with Pavlopetri or Heracleion, the world can trust the map. The silent pyramids of the Atlantic, whether made by fire or by hands, ultimately teach us that the greatest tool in underwater exploration is not the sonar itself, but the disciplined curiosity of those who read its stories. The line between legend and landscape can be as thin as a layer of silt. In the vast, muddy expanse of Germany's Wadden Sea, a story persisted for over 600 years, a moral tale of a town called Rungholt, drowned in a single night as divine punishment for the arrogance and sin of its people. It was a haunting fable, a way to explain the terrifying power of the North Sea. Then, scientists began to map the seafloor at the lowest tides, using precise geophysical surveys to peer into the saturated mud. What they found was not a myth, but a meticulous blueprint. The data revealed the ghostly geometry of a lost medieval world, a network of perfectly straight drainage ditches cutting through the marsh, the raised mounds where buildings once stood, and scattered fragments of everyday pottery. This was no random collection of huts. It was the outline of a planned, wealthy settlement, built with intention on land wrestled from the sea. The people of Rungholt were not just living on the coast, they were actively reshaping it, creating fertile farmland from tidal wetlands through a system of dikes and canals. Their prosperity was literally built on drained peat, a choice that contained the seeds of their demise. Peat is a sponge, and when it is drained, it dries, compacts, and sinks. Over generations, this meant the entire town gradually subsided, putting it lower and lower relative to the sea. The very engineering that made the land livable also made it perilously vulnerable. The historical record provides the catalyst, a specific and terrible event known as the Groot Mandrink, or Great Drowning of Men, a catastrophic storm surge that struck the North Sea coast in January of 1362. Modern climate historians understand this as a powerful extratropical cyclone, coinciding with a high spring tide. For Rungholt, already sitting in a deepening bowl of its own making, it was a death sentence. The storm's surge would have overwhelmed the compromised dikes, flooding the settlement with terrifying speed. The discovery of Rungholt is a powerful fusion of data and memory. Bathymetric mapping provided the physical evidence, the ditches and mounds, while the medieval chronicles provided the date and the human context. This merges geophysical science with historical climatology, showing how a single extreme weather event can intersect with long-term environmental vulnerability to erase a community from the map. The lesson of Rungholt is not about divine punishment, but about human miscalculation on a fragile frontier. It speaks directly to our modern moment, a clear case study from the 14th century about the risks of managing marginal environments without fully understanding the long-term consequences. Their story echoes down the centuries not as a simple fable, but as a sobering precedent, a reminder that our dialogue with the coast requires not just ambition, but profound respect for the unstable ground upon which we build. Stone tools do not sink alone, they carry a world with them. On the rugged coastlines of the Pacific Northwest, from Washington State up through British Columbia, the most advanced mapping technologies are revealing a final, profound category of lost settlement. Here, beneath waters up to 100 meters deep, underwater LiDAR and sonar have begun to trace the subtle signatures of ancient life: stone fish traps built into tidal zones, heavy anchors carved to secure canoes, and the faint but discernible footprints of former village sites. These are not the monuments of kings or emperors, but the durable, practical artifacts of indigenous cultures that thrived along this shoreline for countless generations. Their current location, so far beneath the surface, marks a radical transformation of this entire continent's edge since the great melting at the end of the last ice age. The significance of these discoveries is monumental, quietly reshaping a foundational story of human history. For decades, the dominant theory of how people first entered the Americas focused on an inland corridor, a narrow ice-free passage between glaciers. But these submerged coastal sites point to a different and perhaps earlier pathway. They support the compelling idea of a kelp highway, a theory proposing that the first peoples may have traveled not over land, but along a rich, productive coastline. This maritime route, fringed with kelp forests teeming with fish and marine mammals, would have provided a consistent source of food and materials, allowing for gradual movement southward in boats. Each discovered fish trap, each anchored canoe site, is a potential waypoint on that ancient journey, evidence of a sophisticated coastal adaptation that began much earlier than previously believed. This final settlement type brings our entire exploration to a powerful, unifying point. The rising seas at the end of the Ice Age did not just drown anonymous land. They submerged specific, vibrant ways of life. They flooded the precise fishing grounds a community relied upon, the tidal flats where they engineered stone traps, the sheltered bays where they pulled their canoes ashore. An entire cultural and technological relationship with a specific place was interrupted, its physical stages now lying in the silent dark. This makes these sites uniquely sensitive. They are not merely ruins for academic study, they are active, sacred parts of a living cultural heritage. Their discovery demands a paradigm of respectful research, one built on genuine collaboration with the descendant communities whose oral histories have often preserved the memory of these lost lands. The work here is as much about listening as it is about mapping, blending cutting-edge science with deep traditional knowledge to piece together a more complete and more respectful story of the human past. In the silent stone anchors and fish traps of the Pacific Northwest, we find the most universal lesson of all. Every one of the 15 settlements we have explored, from the Mediterranean to the North Sea to this coastline, tells the same core story of adaptation, resilience, and ultimately, change. They remind us that the coast has never been a permanent line but a dynamic conversation. Our ancestors navigated its shifts, sometimes successfully for millennia, sometimes retreating in the face of its power. As we now look at our own shorelines with new uncertainty, these drowned worlds offer neither a prophecy of doom nor a guarantee of safety. Instead, they offer perspective. They show that our current chapter is just one in a very long book, and that the most enduring legacy we can leave may not be in building walls against the sea, but in learning to read its tides, to remember what it has taken, and to understand the profound, enduring connections between people and place that even the deepest water cannot fully erase. This collective narrative of 15 lost worlds speaks to something fundamental within us. Each site, from the sunken peat fields of Rungholt to the stone circles of Atlit Yam, reveals a shared human impulse to build where land meets water, drawn by the promise of food, transport, and connection. The causes of their drowning are a catalogue of planetary forces, the slow creep of rising seas, the sudden shudder of tectonic faults, the fury of a perfect storm. Yet in their loss they found an unexpected guardian. The cold, dark, oxygen-poor environment of the seabed became a perfect preservative, sealing away artifacts and even footprints with a fidelity that dry land rarely allows. This grants us a clarity of vision into the past that is almost unparalleled, a chance to study a moment frozen not in amber but in silt and stillness. These silent ruins quietly dismantle a linear view of human progress. They show us that societies we consider ancient or even prehistoric possessed remarkable sophistication, whether it was the textile workshops of Pavlopetri or the advanced woodworking at Bouldnor Cliff. Their encounters with environmental change were not primitive struggles, but complex negotiations with the same fundamental challenges we face today: resource management, geological risk, and a fluctuating climate. Their stories remind us that civilizational resilience is not a permanent state, but a continuous adaptation. This understanding forces a humbling perspective, blurring the line between deep history and urgent present. Unraveling these stories is inherently a collaborative endeavor. No single field holds all the answers. It requires the archaeologist's eye for culture, the geologist's understanding of shifting Earth, the oceanographer's knowledge of currents, and the climate scientist's models of ancient atmospheres. This fusion of disciplines turns sonar pings and laser scans into a coherent biography of a place. The data they produce does more than satisfy historical curiosity. It establishes a critical baseline. These submerged settlements are precise benchmarks, showing us exactly how high and how fast the sea rose in the past. They provide a long-term dataset against which we can measure the accelerated changes of our own century. Ultimately, these places are more than time capsules. They are mirrors. The drowned cities and villages are not just relics of what was lost. They are reflections of what we value and what we risk. They ask us to consider what foundations we are building upon today, and how the choices we make will resonate for millennia in the layers yet to be formed. Their greatest lesson may be one of profound connection, a reminder that our chapter is part of a much longer story, and that listening to the whispers from the seafloor might just help us write the next one with a little more wisdom. Our journey across these 15 sunken worlds reveals a coastline that is not a fixed line, but a conversation in constant motion. From the orderly streets of Pavlopetri to the silent stone fish traps of the Pacific Northwest, each site is a testament to human ingenuity meeting the immense, patient power of the planet. The advanced mapping technologies we have explored are far more than tools. They are a new form of vision, a way to listen to the stories the ocean has held for millennia. These are not tales of inevitable doom, but of profound resilience and adaptation, of societies that thrived for generations by understanding their environment, even as that environment slowly transformed around them. The key lesson echoing from the deep is one of dynamic relationship. Our ancestors did not simply conquer the coast, they negotiated with it, building their lives upon a frontier that was always shifting. Sometimes through engineering like the Romans at Caesarea or the farmers of Rungholt, they held that line for centuries. Other times, as with the villagers of Atlit Yam or the hunters of Doggerland, they made the difficult choice to retreat, carrying their knowledge to higher ground. This long view reframes our present moment. We are not the first generation to witness a changing shoreline, but we are the first with the technology to see the full scope of that change, both past and present. These submerged settlements provide a crucial baseline, a deep time record of how sea levels have risen and how cultures have responded. They offer no simple answers, but they provide something perhaps more valuable: perspective. They remind us that the choices we make about our coasts today will become the layers of history tomorrow. Let this exploration change how you see the ocean's horizon. That blue expanse is not an empty void, but a vast archive holding the memories of countless homes, dreams, and innovations. What other chapters of our shared human story remain to be discovered in the quiet dark? If this journey into the deep past has captivated you, consider subscribing for more voyages into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear which of these lost worlds resonated most with you, so share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining this exploration, and remember, the most compelling history is not always buried in the earth. Sometimes it is waiting patiently beneath the waves.